and I'll edit some of this front end, but welcome to the show. Actually, this is not a show. Welcome to the conversation, Carrie. Um, for those who are watching on YouTube, Carrie Allen was on the Envision Speakers series, one of my podcast shows, my conversations, and she was with her colleagues Marlene Muir and Sarah Cotterell, and hopefully I always get that last name. And Sarah, if you're out there listening, forgive me if I messed it up once again. I'm really trying with names. But you um, mentioned something even in the pre-call in the planning session for the Envision Speaker Series about embracing ourselves outside of our titles. And I was so intrigued by that that I had all of you kind of on the spot, really, as we approached the conversation, had all of you talk about who you were, who you thought you were, or who you know you are from a person perspective, not from a title or environment perspective. And I would like to really get kind of a deeper dialogue in that, if we could.
Absolutely. I love that you asked us that question kind of on the spot without any prep, because I think actually a lot of times that gets your wheels turning really fast, but also you have to be really genuine in that moment, right? And even if it doesn't come out because I perfected over like 6 months of saying it over and over again, there's something truth in it. Or you can feel what does you didn't like, right? So I've thought about what I said in that moment, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting more comfortable with what I want to say in that way. And it's not quite there yet. And maybe I'll never get there because I'm really constantly learning about myself and curious about it. And my world continues to evolve and change too. So, the lens that I use to think about myself changes. And so I love that kind of impromptu, like, do it.
Well, I didn't want to put anybody on the spot, but I agree. And so if you were to look at my life today compared to where I was, 2 years ago, and 2 years ago I was in a really bad place, um, wanting to, wanting to kill myself, basically, just really, really bad. And so if I were, you were to put me on the spot and, kind of talk to you about who I was at that time, I would give you some really bad vibes. I would really kind of put us all down. But, through that growth, 2 years plus some, my inner person, who I know I am, has changed. And so, but even today, if you were to put me on the spot, I wouldn't necessarily know how to give you the words that I think should be spoken about me. And so, how did you find the words that you know are true about you in order to communicate who you are? So how did you get to that point, even at a start?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say 2 years ago, because 2 years ago, roughly, was a pretty pivotal moment in my life. And I left the corporate world because, quite frankly, I'd burned out, like
Mm.
severely burned out. My body was screaming at me. My husband kept saying, "You're so like unhappy. You're more stressed than you've ever been in your whole life." And the stress that I had equated in my life previous to that in my career was very different than the stress that I was feeling in that moment in time. And I look back on that and I'm so thankful that it happened, as so many of us can do in the hindsight rearview mirror, right? But in the moment, it was devastating because what I kind of came to in that moment is my dream was no longer my dream. I quit my job. I had an abusive boss who spoke to me in ways that just were not appropriate. I was being squeezed and just treated in a way that truly is abusive. And even still today, it's hard for me to say that because I'm like, well, he didn't mean it. um, but the truth is, it helped me clarify like what's important for me.
Okay.
And wait a minute, this is not who I am, and this is not okay. And it took a lot of different people reflecting that back to me for me to finally have a moment something happened. I came back from vacation and I had been working with a coach, and we did a meditation, and she's like, "Okay, what do you see?" And I just cried. I cried the whole time, and all I could see was sadness. And we actually did the meditation before vacation. And then I said, okay, I'm going to go on vacation and I'm really going to get into my body. I'm really going to feel, how do I feel when I'm away from work?
Mm.
And how do I feel when I return? And at that time, I had a lump in my throat, it's called a globus. There's a word for it. It's an anxiety bubble. And I had them scope my throat because I did not believe them that there wasn't something in my throat. It was so intense for me. I had multiple rashes. I'm still working through, sadly, what's called executive shoulder, just like this stress and tension that you hold in your shoulder.
Wow.
And all these things, like my body was just like, this is terrible, get out of here, what are you doing? And even my son said to me, he's like, mommy, why don't you smile?
Mm. You
Now
didn't
you've
even
known me.
smile.
I did smile, that's the thing, but what was I smiling? I was a robot. I
Mm.
was a legit robot, right? And so in that moment, I had all these like pieces of me that I had to say, who am I? What am I? This is not okay. I was doing so many good things for people in that organization, and yet I was kind of being crapped on. It's like, oh, okay. So one Monday, the Monday I got back from vacation, I sat down at my desk. I saw an article that said the top 5 traits of a toxic leader. I read it. I was like, I have to quit.
Wow.
And my husband called and he's like, wanted to know what bread I wanted from the store. And I just start crying and I'm like, I have to quit my job. And he's like, okay, do it. And why that ties to how I describe myself is that moment there was so much grief because I was in a role that I've been dreaming about my entire life. I'd been working towards. I'd spent so much time and energy, and and so much of what I was doing really lit me up. And it wasn't the right thing for me because it was no longer my dream. It was no longer my dream to work for somebody else, to not be shepherding a vision into existence. And so I had to take time to actually grieve who I was and all the titles and all the things that I would have told you about myself
Mm.
before that time, and really spend time with myself and say, who am I and what do I care about? And while I think a lot of the world can reflect back to you, this is who you are. You're a marketing executive. You do marketing. You're so good at marketing, like all this stuff. You're so creative. The truth was, the real role that I played my entire career was about cultivating amazing people and leading teams and inspiring people.
That's what you knew about yourself? 'Cause
Mhm.
that's like, that was you. That was the you.
That was the
Okay.
me.
And the
And
title was, what was the title?
VP of marketing.
Okay. So, and there was a disconnect there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And I want to go back
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
just a couple steps because I was listening to you, but what I was hearing was it was like you knew either consciously or subconsciously there was something wrong, but your body was telling you something was wrong. Your body was literally telling you something was wrong. But you weren't responding. You weren't responding the way your body wanted you to respond.
Yeah.
Um, and then it took an article, really?
I know.
You weren't even listening to your body still. Are you listening to your body now, Carrie? Are you listening to
Well,
yourself?
I actually should say that what I felt is when we went on vacation, all of those sensations in my body eased just a tiny bit, but enough for me to take notice of, right? And when I went back into the office and I read or office, I was working from home, but and read that article, they all flared again, right? And because I've always been very connected to my body and being able to like feel things pretty intensely, like I noticed that.
Mhm.
And that was the truth, right? Yes, it was the article, but the reality is I felt the shift in my body when I was away from the office and trying to enjoy my time with my family and my kids.
Yeah.
And the second I had to reattach to it, it was like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And I think lots of people out there, whether they're watching this conversation or not, can relate to that. There was
Mm.
a point in my life I could easily relate to that. It, our body tells us, and I think our mind and our body both tell us. And sometimes the the logical part, the thinking part of our brain, is trying to push forward because of whatever reason. We have to pay bills, or this is expected of me, or I put myself in this position. I gotta, suck it up, whatever that is. But then I still want to get to how you reinvented yourself with the words that you use to describe yourself. And so the transition from, okay, I got to quit. You had that, at least the immediate call with your husband said, I got to go. The value to that is he said, go ahead and do it. He
Yeah.
saw the pain that you were going through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he had been saying it to me for months.
Okay.
Um, and I would say, you don't know what you're talking about. Um,
No,
right.
he's just your husband. He don't know nothing.
Yeah. So part of what I've learned about myself since this moment, but I can look back at that moment and realize part of what I experienced in there was this um, duality, which was everybody underneath me, my team, and the teams that I inherited as other people left the organization, loved me. We had great conversations. We were doing fantastic work. They were like, you're helping me so much. You're helping me do this better. You're helping me communicate with this person better. Like, I was getting really positive reflection from those that I could be my most authentic self with, right?
Mhm.
But then from the one person that wanted to control everything, and I say all this with love and grace because I believe it really stems from insecurity. It was just like this, I was getting squeezed, right? But I was getting squeezed by do it my way. I'm not going to change. And I couldn't really be myself going up, right? Even though I tried many, many times. And I'm an optimist. I really am an eternal optimist. I can't help it. So I'm like, I can get him to change. He's going to see. He's going to know. It's going to be fine, right? We're doing great stuff. Look at all the amazing things. Look at all these amazing people. Look at what a great team we built. And he kept saying, every time I would present something, why did you do it this way? This is terrible. I'd walk him through it. He'd say, okay, I guess I understand, but clearly you didn't work hard enough. And then at the very end of every conversation, you're the best thing that's ever happened to this company. We're only here because of you. And
There's
so
a lot there, but we're not going to dive into
I know,
that.
I know. That's not the topic of conversation for today, but to represent that duality, right? So for me, what I was living most day in and day out was this great environment where I was coaching people. I was using all of my strengths that I've always naturally come by, which is a leader, setting the tone, having grace, having love, compassion, empathy for everybody on the team. And so that was awesome. It was awesome. I was finally in a role where I could have big impact in that way.
Mhm.
And yet, when I asked, you know, could I take the next step? How can I grow this? How can I do more? No, stay in your box. And so multiple of those things helped push me. But then I pushed into, okay, everything is collapsing. My body is not feeling good. I need to I need to figure out what's happening here and de-stress. And I got quiet. I literally couldn't put anything on my calendar. I just needed to
Mhm.
breathe out, do a lot of calming and relaxing. And um, I've done a lot of personal growth. I've really invested in myself and getting to know myself more and more and more. My husband would also say, like, I'm a personal growth addict. Like,
And which is okay.
yeah,
Now you mentioned, and I just want to clarify that before you went on vacation with your family, you did meditation. You did a meditation with a coach or
yeah,
I don't even
my
know who that person would be.
yeah.
Um, but then you came back and you reflected back. So meditation has always been a part of your space. Yes, no, maybe.
Um, yes, in some ways. I've always resonated with meditation. I've done yoga for a really, really long time. I mean, in US terms. And I really always enjoyed the savasana at the end. I did pranayama, yoga that was longer, included a longer meditation at the end. I never embraced it as my own practice until about 6 months after I left that job. My coach at the time used it as a tool to help me. But I had one day about 6 months after I quit where I was doing yoga in my office and my body was like, or my body, my subconscious, my soul, whatever, was like, sit down and meditate. And I was like, I don't know why I feel like this, but I'm going to do it. Um, and I'd never done that before. I never just sat and like actually meditated. And
What did that look like? What did that mean? What was that moment? Like what was that
that moment
meditation moment?
That meditation moment was I had done a whole yoga class. I sat down on my yoga mat in lotus pose, just sat there, closed my eyes, and just sat. And literally, it felt like my body was like, and stay. And so many things came up for me in that moment, including what I felt like was a conversation with my grandmother who passed many years ago and who I feel very, very connected to. And the message that just reverberated throughout my body and my brain was let go. Just let go.
Hmm.
Let go of all these things. Let go of that. That's not how it is anymore. Let go. I used to be, I'm a recovering perfectionist and
I think you've
control.
mentioned that before.
I say recovering because it's a truth that
It's
doesn't
a
ever go away,
it's
but
a process. And so through this time of meditation, you were learning that it was okay to let go of things.
not being in control.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so,
Yeah, and that
so
kickstarted my meditation just practice and learning and exploring and understanding how meditation could be incorporated into my life.
so when did you start using words to identify you, describe you, help you?
um, I would say roughly 6 months ago.
Okay. So
I
this year, I mean,
Yeah,
literally,
yeah.
2023 is the time of this recording. Yeah.
This
Wow.
has been a big year for me. A lot has happened to help me actually embrace who I truly am. Um, Including a beautiful retreat I went on where I had deep, deep meditations that really pushed me and reminded me. And I really believe in so many ways the universe has constantly corrected me this year when I get that control, which happens in the left side of my body. It's like this side tenses up and it's like, oh, I'm controlling again. And I've had to kind of like learn that somatically that my body is reminding me gently.
Talking to you. Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah,
Yeah. It
not
talks
so
to us all the
gently.
time. Yeah.
It does.
My
It
stomach
really.
talks to me all the time too. But in different ways. But that's a good thing because you're now conscious of that connection, whereas before you were disconnected in many, many different ways. And everything wanted, as as some close friends of mine would say, your body wants to be whole. uh, it does. It wants to be whole, and it wants you to recognize it. It certainly does. Yeah.
Yeah, it wants to be in conversation with you, right? Like we think about it as this like I even hear people refer to it as like this meat suit, right? That's like this thing we live in. And I'm like, no, actually, like I really, every piece of it speaks to me
We have
and
it for
is
a reason.
telling me something.
It's
Yeah,
there for a reason. Yeah.
it's totally there for a reason, right? And so I've been tuning in, and I would say the last 2 years, but very intensely this past year, I've been tuning in more and more and more to my body, listening to it, spending time in meditation, just asking it, what are you trying to tell me right now? Um, what do I need to learn? And through that practice, I actually and various meditations that I participated in, I created my own meditation, which I mean, 5 years ago, if you told me that I was going to be on a public stage doing meditation, I would have died.
And now you are because every Monday.
Yes, and I do it every Monday because because I feel it. And so one person shows up, 50 people show up. I don't really care because it's actually consistency for me. And every time I do that meditation, I feel something. I connect deeper. And and I will say that that is your body speaking to you, and it's just helping you tune in to your body. And I think more of us, that's when I think about like everything I'm here to do, that helps me know that that's what I'm here to do, right? Like it's so supportive for me to be in tune and in touch and feel good and feel when I'm off and feel what feels good and ask questions about why something didn't feel good, that I feel that that's supportive for others, so I'm going to share it. And if it's supportive for them, great. If it's not the right thing for them, great. Figure out what's right for you, right?
So in when you're meditating, and I've watched you, and I've actually seen people interact with you, and really thank you. I think genuinely thank you that you are also giving them the opportunity to I guess I'll use the word find themselves and feel comfortable with themselves because many people don't.
No,
But I still want to get back to the words because
the
it's the
words.
words that because it's words that we interact with.
Uh-huh.
And when you introduce yourself as, "Hey, I'm," you're at a convention or wherever, and you say, "I'm the senior marketing whatever at blah 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 agency," versus, "Hi, my name is Carrie, and I had the greatest experience this morning in my meditation." That's totally going to change the conversation that you're
Yeah.
about to have. What's more interesting? Oh, okay. Well, I know 5,000 senior executive, whatever, across the globe, but I've not met anybody who said, I had a great time in meditation this morning. Tell me more about that, please. And so you've just approached a situation where somebody has to respond. Well, I don't have to, but at least you told them something that they weren't expecting. And because of that, and you and I both know this because we have conversations all the time, you're now just opened up a door that you can touch somebody not from a superficial perspective, but you
Mhm.
could touch them inside. You could touch them where they need to be touched.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Words are so powerful. And I think a big part of why I've always really felt called to transparency and using words in a really conscious way is that I think they drop seeds,
Mm,
right? Even if that person just says, okay, and walks away, you dropped a seed for them. Because if they feel that resistance inside of them, it may not come, that seed may not grow or germinate for years.
mm,
But I've had it reflected back to me that things I've said to people 20 years ago have offered them something and it's stayed with them in some way, shape, or form, or it's come back up for them. And
yeah.
so this has been a lot of work for myself too, because this is something I've really had to grow through, right? Like getting on LinkedIn and sharing my meditation, like
Just,
scary AF. Um,
but not
Legitimately.
after you've done it for a while, maybe at
Yeah.
first.
Now
Yeah.
I've done it like 6 or 8 or 12 times, and so now it's like, "Oh, yeah, this is great. I love to show up." And I always wanted to push myself into those scary things, like, if it feels right, I'm gonna do it. Even though I'm scared of heights, if I wanna go skiing, I'm gonna go skiing. Like, that's just part of who I am, is I'm gonna push myself in that way if it feels right. If it doesn't feel right, then I listen, but and because of that, that real, like, authenticity that I try to push myself into and be more outward with it, I also try to do that in one-to-one connections because
Mm.
I want the deeper conversation. Yeah, the weather, great. Yeah, the this, the that, right? Like all the things we can talk about. And yet every time somebody says to me, "Hey Carrie, how are you doing today?" And I say, "It is not a great day today." What does that do? It opens the door and
Yeah.
we have a deeper, richer conversation than if I said, "Great, how are you today?" And we just did the surface level thing. And so your point of that can be really uncomfortable for me. And every time I do it, it gets more comfortable because I build relationships that way, which is truly for myself how I now want to work to describe myself, how I want to show up places, how I want to have conversation is using words that are true and authentic to me.
Ooh, you just sparked an idea.
Yes.
Because you said show up.
Yeah.
Um, do you actually do that? So the idea was this, and let
Yeah.
me share the idea, and then we can kind of maybe embrace this a bit.
Let's do it.
Say you're going, literally have going somewhere. You literally have to show up somewhere, and it's in a physical place. Um, I don't even know at this point, and let's just play with the networking idea, a networking
Okay.
event or some kind of a speaking event that you're not speaking at, but you're gonna go there to watch some amazing people talk. In preparation for that, you are using words inside your head to prep you to show up in a certain way. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be joyful. I'm going to be authentic, whatever those words are for you. And then when you are there, those words are already planted in your head, in your body. They are now seeds growing. And so when the experiences happen, when you're interacting with other people, those words are now coming to fruition. They are manifesting themselves. Is that kind of what you've done and seen, or am I kind of like maybe
You
throwing
like
something
just
out there?
read my mind.
Oh, okay, because that's exactly what I was hearing
It's so
when
funny you say that because I probably never would have said that, but you literally like tapped into my brain to see what my process is that I don't think I even identified for myself. I do. I prep myself.
and
I
yeah,
I
at this point you
practice
should
the
be,
right. I
or at
practice the
least it should be part of your practice. Yeah.
yeah. Like um my whole life I talk to myself a lot and I'll have these conversations with myself, but I'll be like, okay, so I'm going to jump on this call. We're going to have this conversation. You know, what do I want to say? What am I feeling today? Like all these different things. And I like kind of pre prep the situation. And then I'm not nervous. And the prep is not what questions am I going to ask? I'm going to research them. It is really more like the vibe that I'm feeling and how do I want to show up
Yeah.
today? And that's listening to myself. And if that's today is a slow day and I don't got it in me, that's what it is,
Yeah.
right? Because it gives permission to other people to feel that way. They need role models and examples. And in a world where we're hustling 24/7,
Mhm.
offering them an example of a person that
Can
is slowing
center
down,
and quiet.
center.
Yeah.
And I just had to laugh because as you said that, the first thing that actually popped into my head, so I have a French marketing degree, so I speak French. And every time, yeah,
Wait,
I've worked,
what? You have a French marketing degree?
yeah,
You
yeah,
just don't have a French degree in French. You have a French marketing degree.
yeah, it's actually commercial studies. So
Wow.
I have a French degree, but then I had to take American business classes, American marketing classes, international business, international marketing, French business, and French marketing classes. Um, yeah, I kind of wish I could go do it again because I think I was having a little too much fun in college and maybe I'd learn even more the second time around. But I was thinking about it because every time I've gone to France or I'm going to have a conversation with somebody that I know that speaks French, I do the same thing. I like have the conversation and I remember the words in French and I like bring them back into my forefront, right?
Mhm.
And so as you said that, that was the first thing that popped into my head is, well, that's what I do when I know I'm going to talk with somebody that speaks French is what are the words that I need? But because you said that, I was like, wow, I do that always.
You show
So
up prepared with the
yeah,
words that you want to, and these are being words. These are solace words. These are
yeah,
words of authenticity and uniqueness and personhood. And these aren't business words. I'm going to sell or I'm going to buy or we're going to negotiate. These are all in presence. You're talking about words that talk about our presence rather than our actions. And so I think there's a whole shift there that you've kind of tapped into and that you
yeah,
now understand,
yeah,
which allows you to kind of come into this conversation and all of your conversations just ready to have the conversation.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's funny, um, because every person you meet, what immediately comes out of your mouth after hello? How
Well,
are you?
how are you? Well, not for me anymore. God doesn't have too many conversations, but you're right, because it's kind of, I think we were taught that, you know.
Yeah.
I even say that to my daughter when she comes home from school. How are you doing? It's like, it's like,
But like tune into that.
yeah.
Do you want to know the answer? Are you asking it because it just comes out of your mouth like it's rote? Or do you really want to hear the answer?
Well, to be honest, because it's my daughter, I do want to hear the answer because sometimes she could come home frustrated because something's happened at school. She's 13 years old. It's cold outside. I think it's been getting colder all day. Talk about the weather, and she hates the cold. And so, if I do ask her that, I am going to get a response. It may be knee jerk, but I am going to get something. She's going to tell me about what's going on with her at that moment, and that's okay. I want her to be
Yeah.
comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. I love that because you are genuinely asking her that. And it sounds like when you don't want to know, you're not using it. But I hear so many people that it's like attached to hello.
Mhm.
And so we have these exchanges where it's like, hey, how are you? I'm good, good. How are you doing? I'm good, good, good. And we keep going on our way. And it's like,
Nothing happened.
none of those words meant anything,
Yeah.
right? Like they literally don't mean anything. You could have just waved and that would have said all those words too. So thinking about that when somebody asks me and or I ask somebody else, really bringing intention to the words, I think is really important.
And I think your presence, how you are presenting yourself, is the other side of that coin. I use that phrase a lot. The flip side of the
Yeah.
coin is if you are in motion and you're walking or like doing something and you're saying the words, but your actions tell the other person that they're just words. And for example, I when I hear her come in and take care of business and come out. She's going to the kitchen. I'm meeting her in the kitchen and I'm literally either standing there or sitting there. I'm not trying to do something as an activity and then ask her this question, how are you? I am waiting for her
Yeah.
so that she knows I'm there and I'm not
Yeah.
doing anything. Like I'm not up here yelling down. I'm not
Yeah.
doing that. I'm literally downstairs in her space.
Yeah.
And that's part I think that's part of like you said, if we're just kind of walking past each other, our actions tell us for the other person what's really going on with us.
Absolutely, right? Like you're using those words. And so she knows that she has your full attention. You genuinely want to hear from her. How is she doing? What's happening for her? And at the end of the day, how can I support you? Right? What's coming up, and is there something else I can do in this moment? And I really think words, we're talking about words and how we describe ourselves, how we interact, bringing attention to it, like the awareness of using the words and making sure that we're conscious of it is just so important. It's the first step to like, how do I describe myself? Like, I think like that's what's been my experience. And how do I get to the words that I'm going to use when I introduce myself? Is okay, how do I describe myself? Yes, this is one thing I do. This is outside of me. Okay. What's more inside of me? I'm a mom. Yep. Still outside of me. Still a role I play, right?
Right,
I'm a
right.
wife. I'm a woman. Closer, closer. But do I want to walk in and say I'm a woman? Kind of obvious in my situation. But so, what is it that I want to express when I meet somebody that allows us to jump into that deep conversation, that allows me to show up as me? Not every conversation is meant to for me to walk in and be that, but I think bringing awareness to that, of in this situation, maybe it's that networking event, maybe I do want to say a little bit more about my passion and my business because that's the audience I'm speaking to. But as I go deeper and deeper into my business is my passion and is a part of me, those things are starting to get closer and closer together.
Well, then let's do this.
Yeah.
With with the amount of time that we've got left on this conversation, let's do a dive. We didn't start the conversation this way, but we could end the conversation this way. Describe yourself, and then I'm going to do my best to describe myself in this moment, and I may actually say the words happy. um, say the words happy, joyful, and delighted uh, as I'm growing as a person with every conversation, whether recorded or not recorded. Um, those things are now more a part of my life. And like I said in the conversation earlier, 2.5 years ago, they were not a part of my life. And I have learned, and I wanted you to go first, but I guess I'm kind of spilling my guts here.
I'm like, I'm just
Uh,
going to let you keep going.
I've learned that the more conversations I have with other people, and at this point, 200 recorded, many more not recorded, with those conversations and people telling me their stories, which is really how it all started, I have learned to become comfortable with my own story. And I am to the point where I'm now telling it. There was a long time where I made two suicide attempts. Nobody's gonna ever know that. That's a shame. I'm shameful of that. Not anymore. And now it's a story. Now it's a part of me. It's who I am. It's the mission I'm on now. To share that story because I know that if other people have told me that that's part of their story and I'm safe enough and comfortable enough to say that's part of my story, we've now made a deeper connection. So it's with every conversation, and I said all that to say it, with every conversation, I actually learn more about me.
Can I interrupt you for one
I'm
second?
done.
Because you're bringing up something that's so incredibly beautiful. One, I have to say, what I hear when you say that is you're so brave. You're so incredibly brave. And I want you to hear that.
And not always been.
I would beg to differ. You're here right now. You're incredibly brave. Incredibly brave. We have our moments that push us to the brink. You're so brave. And I think sometimes we don't say things to people that we really, really feel. And so, one, just wanted to share that with you because I see that and I feel that in every word that you just said.
Thank you.
Two, the second thing that you just said, well, two things that you said, I think are pivotal to thinking about how you describe yourself and what's happening is it is different in every phase, place, space, etc. And one of the things that Sarah and I are working on is how do we create that language for ourselves and those building blocks and get comfortable with the fact that today I'm going to use these blocks and put them together because this is what feels like me today. And tomorrow, two of those blocks may not feel like me, and I'm going to grab two other blocks, and this is how I am today. And all of that is me. And I maybe in this conversation, I'm a little bit more this. In that conversation, I'm a little bit more this. With my family, I'm this way. With this community, one that I don't know very well, I show up differently. That doesn't mean that my most authentic self shifts and changes every day. And how I'm showing up every day or in different situations is going to shift and change too. And so getting more and more comfortable with not boxing ourselves in, actually, like using boxes in ways to feel more fluid and more flexible, I think is really powerful. To not say, oh, I have to come up with this statement that is me and it's always me. What about the day that I don't feel like that? I don't feel like that today. That's not me, right? Um, and so there's an authenticity to shift and change and flow and flexibility. And you said that, and that's really important part of talking about how I am today and who I am right in this moment so that we can have the deeper, richer conversation because I'm not pretending to be the person that I know I am on the inside, even if that person's not showing up fully today. And then the second piece you said, which is also a part of our work, and I think has been, it's like, oh, now I hear it everywhere, and it's becoming such a part of how I'm thinking about this is, and I may have even said it on the other conversation that we had, which is I evolve. I'm a part of the community, and I think about it as a water wheel, and we're a part of the community. And then I do my personal growth as the wheel, and then I offer that back into the community.
Mm.
And that community to community to progress is what fuels evolution, fuels regeneration, fuels progress. And so when you said, the more I talk with other people, I know I'm not alone. And that it starts to build this community from which I can start to grow, right?
Mm.
Ooh, like now I know there's other people that feel this way. I can take a piece of that, I can grow it, and then I can offer it back, and more people are able to move that. So it's really incredibly brave to speak, just to speak a little bit of truth, even if it's 1% of our truth, right? And then grow it to 5%. And maybe we never get to 100%, that's okay. But creating that community by establishing the fact that I'm not alone and having courage to be able to say that, I think that is the biggest shift and change we can create in the world. And I think there's so much of it happening in beautiful conversations like this, in lots of beautiful platforms, but we can't underestimate the value of just a 1% shift in that versus like, I'm going to go to the top of the mountain and I'm going to tell everybody about my experience. And I have to do it that way. Instead, like just micro movements and one-off conversations can make big shifts and changes. So I just had to share those two things because of what you said. They hook into why doing the work to better understand ourselves with grace and love that every day is a little bit different, and sharing that with others really is what changes the world.
Thank you. And I do appreciate it. So,
Okay,
how
so
are you
now,
showing up today? And then we'll end the conversation because I'm sure
yeah,
we'll have
so
others.
yes. I feel like this is just the start. So today I'm showing up Well, I've been very excited for this conversation because I enjoy speaking with you so much and we always get to good nuggets. So that's exciting. And today I'm feeling introspective. Um, I'm feeling I want to slow down. I'm actually feeling like I want to have less conversations, that I've done a lot of outward stimulation. And now it's time to kind of integrate that in my own being and spend time with it. And that's truly like a flow that I wasn't comfortable with before. And so a lot of times I would show up and I just push myself through. I'd have too many conversations. I'd just keep going.
Mhm.
And ultimately, I'd crash and I'd hit a wall. And so I woke up this morning really realizing like today is about slow energy, less consumption, right? I like to read books and listen to podcasts and do all the things. And I was like, today I'm turning off the consumption and today I'm just going to be with me.
Cool.
Yeah,
Carrie, thank you so much.
you're so welcome. It's fantastic as always.
Well, there's no way to end this conversation other than to say thank you. So I'm going to say thank you. And for those of you who are watching and listening, I'll see you next time. Take care.